evening. So I'm going to talk today about the dairy beef industry and what I see are the key opportunities and challenges facing that industry in the next 10 years. Now currently around 70% of adult cattle processed in New Zealand were born on a dairy farm. So this is made up partly of cull cows, so animals that have spent their whole life on a dairy farm and are being culled at the end of their productive life, and also of dairy beef finishing cattle, so either bull beef or prime heifers and steers that are typically beef cross dairy. Now, we're currently in an environment where we have a high milk value relative to the value of the calf, and so dairy farmers are interested in protecting those dairy cows and their milk producing potential, and not willing to compromise that through the risk of calving difficulty that has sometimes been associated with beef bulls. And so what we've seen is a shift towards using Jersey bulls, both over dairy heifers and in a lot of cases as follow-up bulls after artificial breeding. And so we're seeing a lot of Jersey cross or Jersey side calves being born in the dairy industry, and these are ending up on the bobby truck. So does the dairy industry want to change? Do they want to see more development in our dairy beef industry? Well, certainly there is an interest from the dairy industry in having fewer bobby calves. So we recognise that there is potentially going to be market access issues through having a high number of bobby calves into the future. So things we can do towards improving that certainly will be seen with value. We're also seeing an increase in the number of dairy farmers using artificial breeding for the whole season for their milking herd. So they're no longer using follow-up bulls, instead they're artificially breeding all their cows. And so that obviously opens the door for a lot of those cows to go to beef semen. However, we're still in an environment where we have high value of milk relative to calves, and so there is no interest in compromising calving needs in exchange for a high value calf. What about the beef industry? Do they want change? Well, we are seeing reduced availability of traditional beef weaners because our beef breeding cow numbers are declining. And there continues to be an interest in calves that grow well and that have good carcass and meat quality traits. So there's always an appetite for good finishing animals. Now, one of the challenges with dairy beef is that typically the calves will grow slower through that first summer and autumn when they're early weaned and the pasture quality is low, and so this means lots of those dairy beef calves don't finish before their second winter, and that does make them less efficient in the beef industry. So that's something that we do need to think about going forward. And of course, there's interest from the beef industry also in reducing our number of bobby calves, because anything that damages New Zealand's reputation is going to damage it for all of our primary industries. This isn't just a dairy industry issue. Now, beef semen for dairy farmers. Currently, beef straws are cheaper than the top dairy straws. And so if you have a herd where AB is going to produce more than enough replacements, then beef semen is a pretty cost-effective option for your lower merit cows and your later calving cows. So it's not going to require a big change to see more beef semen going into dairy cows through artificial breeding. Beef bulls for dairy farmers, the numbers aren't quite so clear. So a follow-up bull is recommended to make no more than 30 cows and is likely to produce around 20 calves in a season. Likewise, bulls mated to heifers are going to produce around 20 calves in a season. A dairy farmer can lease or purchase a Jersey bull at a total cost of around $500 for the season. In comparison, a registered beef bull might cost $2,500, and if he's only producing 20 calves, you're looking at an extra $100 per calf produced from using the beef bull. So the value proposition of using a beef bull needs to improve, and it certainly will be better if the bull is used for more than one season, and it will be better still if he can be used to mate both the heifers and the cows. So typically heifers are mated at the same time as the cow herd is undergoing AB, so if your bull is suitable for mating heifers, it's quite feasible that he could be used for both jobs. Now, as I said earlier, easy-calving is non-negotiable for a dairy farmer. Data from the Beef and Lamb New Zealand Genetics Dairy Beef Progeny Test shows us that we actually have many bulls in our population, beef bulls, that are suitable for mating over dairy cows without causing calving difficulty, but also that we have few beef bulls that are suitable for mating dairy heifers without causing an increase in calving difficulty compared to what you would get using a Jersey bull. To give you an idea, a crossbred dairy heifer, so a Frisian Jersey, has a target live weight of 450 kilograms at 22 months, and that includes the weight of the calf, and a significant portion of our dairy herd do not currently reach that target live weight. And so from that 450 kilogram calf, a Jersey side calf weighs around 30 kilograms. So that's more or less where an easy calving beef bull needs to be aiming. Now, if we could reliably get easy calving in dairy heifers, and I'm sure that we could with selection, then we would see an increase in the uptake of beef bulls over dairy heifers. Now, of course, if we select for easy calving, we're selecting for low birth weight, and we're going to see a decrease in growth rate through the correlated trait. We can get around this in the cows by using whole season AB. So if we use AB, we've got scope to go to those really top end bulls and get those curve bender animals that produce not only the easy born lighter weight calf, but a calf that then goes on to grow really well. That will be harder to achieve with the number of bulls needed for natural mating in heifers, but there's potential to think about, well, what is the right market for the different types of calves? And heifers' calves are typically early born. They'll be born July, August. Can we think about ways to finish them perhaps at lighter weights and at younger ages? So certainly with effort, could we get those animals off before their second winter and perhaps even younger? Now, one of the problems with the market as we currently have it is that if we use a superior curve bender bull, he produces little wee calves that are not worth a lot at the sale of when they're sold as a feeder calf. So currently there are premiums paid, which are basically paid on the basis of calf size and colour. So calf buyers are making judgments on the expected performance of the calf based on the traits that they can see, which is basically the size and the colour. So if we could improve the relationships between dairy farmers and finishers, then we could have calves traded on growth potential. So that's really what the finishing farmer is trying to judge, looking at size and colour. And so maybe we need to think about how we can characterise finishing potential in an index that could be used at point of sale. So dairy farmers typically trade young calves on BW because that's recognised as a good predictor of their performance in the dairy herd. So maybe we need something similar for dairy beef calves that characterises their finishing potential. Now, gestation length certainly needs a mention. We know that shorter gestation length means earlier calving and therefore more days in milk. And we know that beef bulls can offer an advantage over dairy bulls that typically have a 282-day gestation length. But of course, there is a trade-off between short gestation and rearing costs and growth potential. So the market needs to establish what is the relative value that will dictate the compromise between gestation length and growth rate. But this will only happen if there is a mechanism for paying on growth potential. Another thing that's likely to change in the dairy industry in the next few years is that what we're seeing currently is a massive increase in the value of fat, milk fat. So milk fat relative to milk protein. For a long time, protein's been the high value product, and that's led to our dairy herd being, yes, it's crossbred, but it's Frisianish crossbred. And if there's a big increase in the milk fat value, which there has been and it's predicted to continue, then that may change towards being a Jersey-based crossbred. And so when we think about dairy beef finishing calves, obviously the calves will inherit different finishing characteristics from their dams if she's a Jersey-based crossbred compared to a Frisian-based crossbred. And so we need to think about breeding bulls that will complement Jersey traits coming from the mum more so than Frisian traits. We also need to think about how we can address the growth rates of dairy beef weaners in that first summer and autumn. So we need to think about management. Can we use herb pastures or other options, supplements, to accelerate their growth? And also, what can we do genetically? So a significant portion of the growth rate or the growth of the dairy beef weaner is post-weaning growth. Typically, they're weaned by 10 weeks of age, and so our emphasis needs to be on post-weaning live weight gain rather than pre-weaning gain. So, in summary, what do we need to breed for? Calving ease that's suitable for dairy heifers and Jersey-based dairy heifers. Gestation length that's shorter than, or at least shorter than 282 days. Growth potential in early weaning systems, so post-weaning gain. And of course, ultimately, we're trying to produce an animal that yields well and is delicious. So we need to think about the carcass yield and the meat quality. And that's important for all our beef systems. Ultimately, we're producing a carcass. So, in my opinion, if we have enough bulls that sire calves that are born safely and grow efficiently to produce a high-quality product, dairy beef is likely to be a thriving industry in 2028.